What's up guys, Z here, and we are back with another monk build. I think this is pretty much one of the last staple builds for the monk, but I was taking the advantage of doing Season 8 with the monk and getting all of the builds done because I never really played with the monk primarily, and I wanted to see which build I liked the most. So this is the Wave of Light build, or the Sunwuko set build. So if we hop right into it, for your headpiece, you're going to be wearing the z.exe gaze. And the reason being is because now you can cast Wave of Light on the enemy. Basically, anywhere your mouse is clicked. So normally Wave of Light casts right on top of your character. This will let you throw out longer distance shots, which is invaluable. Also, this Crin's Graze gives you a massive boost to Wave of Light damage. You can see 145% is the one I got, and it goes 125 to 150. That's really helpful. And as always, well, pretty much always, I have the diamond in there for the reduced cooldown on all of my skills, namely my Epiphany skill. If we move to the shoulders, we are using the Sunwuko's balance. And now we can see the 2, 4, and 6 set bonuses. So they are as follows. 2 set, your damage taken is reduced by 50% while Sweeping Wind is active, which in this build will be active 24/7. And if it becomes inactive, you better reactivate it because it is invaluable. For the 4 set bonus, every second, Sweeping Wind spawns a decoy next to the last enemy you hit that taunts nearby enemies and then explodes for 1000% weapon damage for each stack of Sweeping Wind you have. Now, Sweeping Wind defaults at 3 stacks, and this is an autonomous part of the build. So when I'm in a fight, I can be standing there, and if an enemy is within range of Sweeping Wind, like a gold imitation of my character will appear and explode every second. I mean, it's helpful, but it doesn't do a lot of damage, like not as much as you would think, especially since you can see I have 10 stacks of Sweeping Wind. But it's helpful nonetheless. The 6 set bonus is really where it takes off. Lashing Tail Kick, Tempest Rush, and Wave of Light consume a stack of Sweeping Wind to deal 3000% increased damage. So this is what makes your Wave of Light extremely powerful. And it does exactly what it says. If you look at my 10 stacks, if I use Wave of Light, it knocked it down to 9, and then it shot back up to 10. It gains stacks for another reason, but I just wanted to show you that it does consume a single stack. So if we move to the necklace, we have Sunwuko's Shines. This is gemmed with Bane of the Trapped. Bane of the Trapped is in there because my Wave of Light slows enemies. So when I slow all the enemies, if I hit them with a second Wave of Light, if they're still alive, it will deal extra damage. Also, if they get close to me, they will be slowed automatically. So that's a pretty good shoe-in. For the chest, you're going to be using Sunwuko's Soul. And again, it's just another piece moving towards that 6 set bonus. And I have 3 dexterity gems in there for extra dexterity and damage. For the hands, Sunwuko's Paws, I have it set up with critical hit damage and critical hit chance, and also reduction of on all skills. I'm taking a hit on my vitality, but those are extremely good skills to have for this build. When you move over to the wrists, the Pinto's Pride is one of the best in slot for this build. This is what makes the Wave of Light slow down your enemies. So it slows them by 80% for 3 seconds, and on top of that, it gives it 125 to 150% increased damage on top of everything else. So it's a pretty good shoe-in. For the belt, we're using Kyoshiro's Soul. Sorry if I'm butchering the crap out of these names, but I'm trying. Sweeping Wind gains 2 stacks every second. It does not deal damage to any enemies. So this sounds great, and it is. It's absolutely absolute necessity for this build. However, be careful. You want to keep your distance from enemies pretty much all the time, and this is why. If I'm attacking people, consuming my stacks of Sweeping Wind for that big damage Wave of Light, and I'm getting swarmed and I can't get out of it, my Sweeping Wind will not regenerate its stacks. Therefore, I lose the damage buff on Wave of Light, and then I cannot kill anything. And I will probably end up dying. But this can be alleviated by Dashing Strike, which I do have on and I will show you. For the ring, Pandemonium Loop is not the ring you want to use. It just happens to be an ancient level legendary ring with a socket. And I was really short on rings. I'm having a horrible time with rings this season, but I have this in here with Zai's Stone of Vengeance, and this increases the damage on an incremental amount based off the distance you are away from your enemy in an increasing fashion. Also, 20% chance on hit to stun an enemy for 1 second. So every enemy hit has a 20% chance to be stunned, which is good because it keeps them away. In my other ring slot, I have Unity, and this ring is also on my follower with the Invulnerability Templar Relic, so I get my damage cut in half again. So I have damage cut in half by Sweeping Wind and damage cut in half by Unity. So that is awesome. The crudest boots are on my feet. Again, the Mystic Ally summons 2 allies that fight by your side. The reason this is helpful is because in the skills with the ally, the way its passive is, and I will explain it when I get to the passives, it really does help the build. Now, one of the absolutes that you have to have is Kayoshiro's Blade. It increases the damage of Wave of Light by 150%. When the initial impact of your Wave of Light hits 3 or fewer enemies, the damage is increased by 231%, and that can roll for 200 to 250. This will make your Wave of Light hit that much harder. Now, it is ancient, but I did not get a Remeladni's Gift yet. I'm still searching for one of those to throw in here so I can put a Dex gem in and get my huge critical hit damage up. So in my offhand, I have Vengeful Wind, which increases my maximum stacks of Sweeping Wind by 6 or 7. So I can have 9 or 10 stacks of Sweeping Wind. So I have 10 stacks because it's increased by 7. If you are having trouble and you are dying a lot, I recommend switching to the Crystal Fist, because when you use Dashing Strike, it reduces damage taken from 40 to 50% for 6 seconds, which is a pretty long time. I did have this equipped, and then I preferred to have Vengeful Wind because I wanted more stacks of Sweeping Wind active at all times. Let's look at the skills. Wave of Light, obviously it's the namesake of the build with Explosive Light, which will give you fire damage, and it explodes in a huge wave. You can see right here. It goes in a very large area. Dashing Strike, Blinding Speed, again, this is a mobility selection. You do not want enemies all over you. You need them far away. The further they are, the better you are performing. So this is a close the gap or make a bigger gap between your enemies and mob groups. Epiphany Desert Shroud is a pretty good staple for monk builds in general, and this will reduce the damage that you take. And also, the other great piece is it increases the spirit generation substantially, which using Wave of Light, which is 75 spirit base, costs a lot of spirit, and you go through it quickly. This will help curb that huge cost. Sweeping Wind obviously is in this build, and it has Inner Storm. And the reason I do Inner Storm is as long as my Vortex is at 3 or more stacks, I gain 8 spirit per second generation. So I'm at 10 stacks. I literally can't cast Wave of Light fast enough to get it down to less than 3 stacks. So I'm always at 8 spirit per second regeneration, which helps substantially, like I said, because Wave of Light is expensive. Another item that's helping with my regeneration, Mystic Ally on Air Ally. The active ability gives me 100 spirit, so that means I get 200 spirit because there's 2 allies. The passive increases my spirit regeneration by 4, so I get 8. And everything else I don't really care about. It doesn't really deal much damage, but that passive and that active is really nice. So for my Mantra of Salvation, I have Agility in there. So this increases my resistances to everything. And if I activate it, it's even more resistance. And also, it has Dodge. So that's very helpful. For passive, I have Harmony, Beacon of Yatar, Near Death Experience, and Exalted Soul. These you can play around a little bit. Harmony, I always pick with the Monk because it helps me stay alive substantially. It increases your elemental resistances. Beacon of Yatar reduces cooldowns. I usually pick this as well. Cheat Death, you don't have to use it, but I do because my health is pretty low right now because I'm not super geared out and with the right rolls and all that yada yada nonsense. And an Exalted Soul, again, you don't have to take it, but I picked it because it increases my max spirit by 50 and it increases my spirit regeneration by 4 more per second. So I'm very, very stacked on my spirit regeneration. You can see it goes up quite quickly. And even if you look at my follower, I have Inspire on the Templar, and this increases my spirit regeneration by 10%. So if I go down to resource, my spirit regeneration per second is sitting at 22, which is pretty good. So 22 per second, 75 base cost on this spirit cost on the Wave of Light. If we look into the Paragon, for utility, resource cost reduction is an absolute must. That 10%, you really, really need it. As far as everything else, it's pretty much the same shindig. You can increase maximum spirit if you want to. I don't really think it's that necessary. So for Kanai's cube, I have the Furnace in the weapon slot, which increases damage against the elites by 50%. You can use Envious Blade if you wanted to, but I recommend this for high tier people with this build because this will give you a 100% critical hit chance against every enemy at full health. So if you're doing speed runs especially, or you're just that damn good, you can run through a rift or whatever you're doing, a bounty, and you can just lay down your Wave of Light and it will critical hit everybody, deal massive fucking damage, and everybody dies. So that's an option. I prefer the Furnace. It's more consistent with damage increase for me because one-shotting people is not super likely, especially if I go beyond Torment 10 with this character right now. Maybe later when I have both my ancient weapons and they're socketed with all that increased critical hit damage, I'll be at like 500%. You know, maybe then. For the armor slot, I'm using Mage Fist for now. It increases my fire skill damage by 20%, which Wave of Light with the Explosive Light rune is a fire skill, so it gets a damage boost. What you want to be using is Cinder Coat, which reduces the resource cost of fire skills by 30%. This will definitely help you bring down the cost of the Wave of Light skill, so you can use it and kind of spam it a little bit more. But I did not get it yet, so I have Mage Fist on right now. For my ring slot, I have Ring of Royal Grandeur. This way I am allowed to wear, as you can see, I don't have the head on. I do have the head, but I needed to have the Kryn's Graze so I can cast it away from me. So I have 5 out of 6 pieces on, still have the 6 set bonus, so I have Ring of Royal Grandeur. Now, I told you Pandemonium Loop is what I have on. I would recommend throwing a Convention of Elements in there if you have one that's really good and socketed, because when it rotates the fire, you are going to trash mobs. Like, I mean, trash mobs. Alright guys, that's pretty much the build. In the background, you've been watching the whole time next to this video. I have showed you me running a Torment 10 regular Nephilim Rift, just to show you a general idea of how it looks when it plays. Try it out for yourself. It's a really cool build. It's like a caster, but as a monk. It's pretty interesting. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next video. Later.